January 6th is an event that will undoubtedly be published in history books, just based on how polarizing it was for the American people. But what doesn't really get talked about enough, and what I doubt will be talked about in history books, is how it really changed political discourse and how we as Americans view patriotism. Now, just to give a brief overview in an unbiased way of what happened in January 6th, at 12 o'clock, Trump began speaking to his supporters near the White House at a rally that he had scheduled because he had lost the election to President-elect Joe Biden. And he was hoping to overturn the certification based on his tweets made on his public Twitter profile. And he was tweeting well before the event took place, saying, quote, "If Mike Pence doesn't certify the vote, we will win the election." During the speech at around 1 p.m., people started to storm the Capitol, and they actually broke through the outer police barrier around the Capitol. And when the speech finished, more and more people started to flood it. A little bit after 2 p.m., protesters actually made it into the Capitol after, as we see in the pictures, rioting with police and harming police officers and disturbing the peace. They made it into the Capitol. This is when a lot of violence started to happen. We actually, tragically, a woman had lost her life due to this, the security guard defending themselves from her getting any further. And a little before 3 p.m., they actually made it into the Senate chamber. Senators and people in Congress were actually moved to secure facilities and secure areas where they barricaded the doors with armed security officers and policemen. After people had been injured and protesters and innocents included, President-elect Biden addressed the nation at 4 p.m., encouraging Trump to get on television and stop this. While he didn't get on television, at 4:17, Trump finally tweeted to his followers to stop and go home. Now, during this, he was tweeting that please remain peaceful, but rioters aren't really checking their phone. But just for clarification, he did state that he wanted them to remain peaceful. Now, I want to talk about before January 6th and the discourse surrounding politics in this. And honestly, there's a lot of credence that goes to the Republicans. There was a lot of criticism on the BLM riots, or Black Lives Matter riots. There was a lot of violence going on in these riots, especially in, like I see in the picture, the George Floyd riots that happened in all around the world, where we saw like the Kenosha riots with people like Kyle Rittenhouse taking actions into their own hands. Whether legal or not, that's up for debate. But he was found not guilty. And also the anti-police rhetoric that came with these riots, Republicans didn't like that. They are very pro-police. And there was a very big lack of accountability for the damage and destruction done by these rioters. A lot of government officials and a lot of mayors and higher ups were not holding these people accountable. The Republicans found themselves, and everyone else believed, that they were the party of law and order. Whether we agree with their positions or not, they were. And they were so pro-law enforcement, and they supported them to the fact that they actually created their own movement, another BLM, but Blue Lives Matter, in contradiction to Black Lives Matter, saying that police lives, blue lives, also matter. But after January 6th, as you can see by these pictures, they were now seen as hypocrites. Everything they had said about Black Lives Matter, they did. They destroyed property, they harmed police officers, and they weren't held accountable because they all got pardons. In a clip that I can't show today because it shows someone, the woman who tragically passed away getting shot, you can actually hear the people during that recording saying "F the blue." I can't say the word obviously because of school, but you can assume what they were saying. F the blue. The party of law and order broke into our Capitol and criticized police officers for not allowing them to do so. But this didn't just call them hypocrites, it also polarized America. Now we have two sides, one fighting for social justice and the other one, and the other side, rioting our Capitol because they lost an election, which caused infighting within their own Republican Party. Now separating in between Trump Republicans and normal Republicans. Normal being what was constituted before Trump came in office. Trust in our news outlets was an all-time low. And it redefined what patriotism means today. Now, before we get into what patriotism means, here are some news headlines that kind of discuss what I'm talking about, right? Just today, I know it says today, but that's actually the news source I got it from. But just today, Jan 6 attacks get in the way of Republican talking points on ICE protests. Hit a cop, you're going to jail. Seemed uncontroversial, but in the Trump administration, it's a maxim that comes with an important fine print. Hitting a cop. Well, a lot of people did that Jan 6, but they criticized people for doing that for ICE riots. Trump's Jan 6 pardons divide House Republicans, The Hill, and Trump sweeping pardons of Jan 6 rioters faces no pushback, despite many Republicans disagreeing with action, from PBS, which is a little funny. If you don't know, Trump actually decreased funding for PBS. But getting on to what patriotism means, well, before Jan 6, patriotism was simply a love for country, national pride, and a belief in our country and our Constitution. People would fly our flag outside of their house for Labor Day, Memorial Day, even tragedies such as 9/11. They'd fly their flag out in love for the American and what we stood for. Even though we were two competing sides, Republican and Democrat, or conservative and progressive, conservatives emphasized strength. Progressive pushed America to live up to its ideals, mainly being civil rights. But after January 6th, that all changed. Rioters feel that they were acting in defense of democracy and the Constitution during January 6th. And they were defending that right, while the mainstream media felt that it was actually the opposite, and they were attacking democracy and our own Constitution. And now, after this event, the American flag is not seen as country pride and love for our country and patriotism, but it's seen as a unifying symbol. Not seen as a unifying symbol, and is now more politically charged than ever. And if you drive around with the American flag on your truck, more likely than not, people will assume you're a Trump supporter, whether that's true or not. Now, why does this matter? Well, the country now is more fragmented than ever. Two sides of the same coin, one believing one thing, another believing another, is not, that phrase can't be used anymore. We both now hate each other, is what it seems from statistics. Where both we can meet in a middle ground, there's no more middle ground to be met with. Our government systems, like our election process, are now constantly in question because no one can believe news outlets, which we get to on our next point. We don't believe our news outlets anymore. We believe in people like Tim Pool and Fox News, Steven Crowder, people like that, independent news sources that Republicans may feel that only do the news. It undermined our democracy and has confused our own national identity. We don't know who we are anymore, which has led us to being laughed at by other countries. We're the laughingstock now. And it not only that, but it's changed political discourse for the foreseeable future. And similar to how this picture is, this is a statue in the Capitol covered in blood, but we have simply just thrown a plastic bag over it to kind of cover up what happened. That's why this matters. Because it changed everything we know about politics today and completely undermined everything that we have stood for. And now we have completely changed as a country because of this. Thank you.